The woman slipped off her coat and into a black cocktail dress, then primped herself meticulously, waiting patiently for her prey to appear. And today, her target was the man standing right before her. Just then, a drunk woman accidentally bumped into the man, and then wouldn't let it go, tugging at him demanding compensation. Hearing the commotion, Guanwen hurried over to help defuse the situation, only to get vomited on by the woman. The woman's friend immediately apologized to Guanwen and hurriedly led her away. The man angrily cursed the woman's lack of manners, but when he turned and saw Guanwen's shapely figure, he froze. He quickly took off his coat and draped it over her. Guanwen then successfully obtained the man's contact information under the pretext of borrowing the coat. The next day, Guanwen arranged to meet him. The man thought this was a beautiful chance encounter. Guanwen appeared before him dressed in a formal business suit. It turned out the man was a key partner their company was courting. To get close to him, Guanwen and her best friend had staged that entire scene. Because Manager Wu was crucial to Guanwen's career, her current boss was about to be transferred back to headquarters. His position would soon be vacant. Whoever secured the major project with Hengtian would take over as the new leader. Yet Guanwen wasn't the only one eyeing that position. Her colleague Xianya was also in the running. Guanwen had thoroughly prepared for this meeting. Her professionalism earned Manager Wu's approval, and he expressed willingness to consider partnering with her. Guanwen thought victory was assured, but then Xianya emerged unexpectedly. Lacking Guanwen's capabilities, Xianya resorted to underhanded tactics. Xianya presented Manager Wu with a watch. Just then, Guanwen rushed in. She couldn't let Xianya ruin her plans. She handed Manager Wu the report her team had worked on through the night. Guanwen intended to outshine Xianya with her merits, but the cunning Manager Wu didn't even glance at it before rejecting it outright. He claimed he needed to consult headquarters before making a decision. Guanwen instantly understood the situation. She immediately mentioned the chairman of Hengtian. Manager Wu instantly grasped Guanwen's meaning. The next day, her superior Ma Te informed Guanwen she'd secured the Hengtian project. It seemed the director position was hers for the taking. Guanwen was overjoyed and invited her girlfriends out for drinks that night. She got drunk and called a designated driver. Unexpectedly, the driver accidentally rear-ended the car in front. Guanwen got out and started acting drunk. The car she hit? None other than her ex-boyfriend from college, Ding Li. Ding Li froze upon seeing Guanwen. He never expected to run into her here. He didn't want to deal with her. But then Guanwen climbed onto his car and used lipstick to write jerk all over it. Ding Li couldn't take it anymore. He snatched the lipstick from her hand and scrawled his contact information across her face. He intended for Guanwen to sober up and repay him. But the next day, Guanwen woke up looking like a spotted cat. She couldn't recall anything from the night before. Just then, Guanwen received a call from Manager Wu. He invited her out for dinner that evening to discuss a business collaboration. Guanwen knew exactly what Manager Wu was up to, but she couldn't outright refuse. The clever Guanwen had already prepared her escape route. Just as Manager Wu was about to get close to Guanwen, a voice called out to him. This startled Manager Wu to death. He quickly reminded Guanwen to be careful with her words. What Manager Wu didn't expect was that his wife was the one Guanwen had called, and the timing was perfect. Manager Wu, guilty as charged, stammered in response to his wife's questioning. Guanwen promptly stepped in to defuse the tension, dispelling Lin Xian's doubts with a few well-chosen words. He even added Lin Xian as a friend. Finally, he reminded Manager Wu about the Hengtian project. Seeing his goal achieved, Guanwen quickly withdrew. Little did he know that upon returning to the office, he stumbled upon Lydia and Baidet in the midst of an affair. Guanwen glanced at them and walked straight past. Fearing exposure, the pair began plotting behind his back. The next day, Guanwen received news that Ma Te had been suspended. Someone had reported Ma Te's project as corrupt. Guanwen suspected Xianya and Baidet were behind it. Ma Te's downfall dragged Guanwen into trouble too. She wasn't even invited to the company's regular meeting. But Guanwen wasn't about to give up easily. She flatly rejected Ma Te's condition that whoever secured the Hengtian project would become director. Instead of confronting them, Guanwen directly handed the secured Hengtian project to Xianya. Both were stunned. The cautious Baidet suspected it was Guanwen's scheme and warned Xianya not to trust her easily. But Lydia saw it as an opportunity. Lydia believed Guanwen had given up because she no longer had Ma Te backing her, thinking she'd scored a big win. She was delighted. Little did they know this was all part of Guanwen's plan. Through their recent interactions, Guanwen had clearly identified Manager Wu as a lecherous man. Knowing Xianya's tactics, she devised a scheme to eliminate Xinya once and for all. True to her expectations, Xinya, seizing the chance, immediately arranged a meeting with manager Wu. She dressed up extravagantly, constantly flirting and throwing herself at him. Upon learning Xinya had left with the driver, Guanwen promptly called the driver, using the pretext of borrowing the car to obtain their address. She then phoned Lin Xin, falsely claiming the company had just released a new handbag model to gift her. Lin Xin was naturally delighted. Guanwen arranged to meet her at a restaurant, the very same restaurant Xinya had gone to. Meanwhile, Lydia was still happily drinking with manager Wu, unaware that disaster was about to strike. Just then, Xinya deliberately spilled red wine on manager Wu's shoes and bent down to wipe them clean. This gesture delighted manager Wu immensely. Xinya thought the plan was certain to succeed, but at that very moment, Lin Xin, who had just entered the restaurant, witnessed the entire scene. When their eyes met, the CEO panicked and stood up abruptly. To everyone's surprise, Xinya stood defiantly before Lin Xin, demanding, "Who are you?" Lin Xin said nothing, merely stepped forward, grabbed a glass of red wine, and flung it directly into Xinya's face. Xinya reacted by shoving Lin Xin to the ground. This enraged Lin Xin to the extreme. Without hesitation, she delivered a sharp slap across Xinya's face. A fierce brawl erupted immediately. Guanwen's scheme had succeeded. The next day, news of Xinya's failed attempt to seduce manager Wu and her subsequent humiliation at Lin Xin's hands spread like wildfire throughout the company. Yet the shameless Xinya, devoid of any sense of shame, would never resign voluntarily. Left with no choice, Guanwen produced the resignation plan HR had given her. To her shock, Xinya tore it up. Just then, someone arrived to announce the company had just issued a personnel transfer order. Seeing Xinya's utterly fearless expression, Guanwen felt an ominous foreboding. Sure enough, headquarters appointed Bai Di as the concurrent director of brand expansion, as Xinya's lover. On his first day, he dismissed the incident between Xinya and Lin Xin as a misunderstanding. Xinya stood by like a victim, her face beaming with smug satisfaction. The two then handed the matter over to Guanwen, demanding she secure the Hengtian project within a week. Guanwen stormed back to her office. When Ma Te was around, everyone in the company respected her. Now, they were all waiting to see her fail, but Guanwen wasn't about to give up easily. She had fought her way to her current position through sheer determination, so Guanwen tapped into her network of connections. After some effort, she finally uncovered the schedule of President Zhang, the boss of Hengtian. Then she borrowed her best friend's child and headed to the racetrack. Before Guanwen could speak, President Zhang saw through her plan, but he recognized her as a sharp individual. Previous clients had either waited at the office or ambushed him in restaurant parking lots. She was the first to think of borrowing a child to track him down at the racetrack. After a few brief exchanges, President Zhang found Guanwen clear-headed and full of ideas. He informed her the child would be dismissed in 20 minutes, meaning she had just 20 minutes for negotiations. Guanwen immediately handed over her business card and swiftly briefed President Zhang on the collaboration details. Leveraging her professional expertise, Guanwen successfully convinced President Zhang. The next day, President Zhang personally arrived at TL Company with his secretary to discuss the partnership. Unexpectedly, Bai spoke ill of Guanwen and apologized to President Zhang for having bothered him. President Zhang remarked that Guanwen's logic, articulation, and interpretation of Hengtian's plans were excellent. Thus, Guanwen successfully secured the contract. Meanwhile, the scheming woman beside her was likely fuming with rage. That evening, Guanwen went drinking at a bar with her close friend Chen Shanshan. However, a minor disagreement led to an unpleasant atmosphere. Fuming, Chen Shan prepared to leave when she overheard someone bad-mouthing Guanwen. Without hesitation, she stepped in to teach the trashy woman a lesson. Emerging from the restroom, Guanwen froze at the sight. Chen Shan, who moments ago had sworn to cut ties, was now fighting fiercely for her sake. To say she wasn't moved would be a lie. Guanwen rushed to break up the fight, but the two were locked in a fierce struggle, impossible to separate. Instead, she herself was shoved aside. Just as she was about to fall, a kind stranger caught her securely. This person was none other than Guanwen's ex-boyfriend, Ding Li. Who would have thought their second meeting would occur in such an unromantic setting? The next day, Xianya started spreading rumors about Guanwen. She claimed Guanwen had incited her friends to take revenge on her. Guanwen demanded proof. Xianya was rendered speechless. By the new Xianya couldn't stand up to Guanwen. He dismissed them both. He then announced that Guanwen had secured the major Hengtian project for the company. Headquarters was highly satisfied with her performance. He would therefore apply for an additional bonus for Guanwen. However, as Guanwen's supervisor, while he greatly admired her work capabilities, he disliked her temper and personality. Baidu stated that no matter how hard she tried, the company would never promote her to director. Guanwen was too flashy, too high profile, too self-centered. As an employee, she could be a powerful asset, but she would never become a leader. As long as she stayed content as deputy director, he would look out for her in the future. Baidu thought Guanwen had come to her senses, but to everyone's shock, Guanwen immediately handed in her resignation. Her friends were stunned to hear she'd quit. This wasn't like her at all, but Guanwen knew exactly what she wanted. She refused to waste her life on the wrong track. The next day, as Guanwen packed her things, Xianya came over to mock her. Her smug, petty victory expression was downright infuriating. After Guanwen resigned, Tu approached her and recommended a company perfectly suited for her. This company was even more prestigious than TL. During the interview, Guanwen's impressive resume and skills earned unanimous praise from the interviewers. Tu also told her the 3 interviewers were very satisfied and advised her to wait patiently. Guanwen felt certain she had the job in the bag. Unexpectedly, Xianya began spreading rumors to smear Guanwen's reputation. She claimed Guanwen was arrogant and domineering, acting unilaterally with zero team spirit, and even had ambiguous relationships with numerous clients. This ultimately led to Guanwen failing the HR background check, once again missing out on the director position. Tu reminded Guanwen that if she couldn't build good relationships with superiors, no company would risk hiring her. But Guanwen insisted to Tu that none of this was true, it was all slander. Tu also told her that people nowadays wouldn't bother to deeply understand a stranger. They only listened to what they wanted to hear. As for the truth, nobody cared. Guanwen walked down the street feeling desolate. She never imagined her years of hard work could be undone by mere rumors. What had all her efforts been for? Just then, Xianya called. She mockingly asked how Guanwen's job search was going. Xianya believed Guanwen was doomed to lose this time. With Guanwen's now notorious reputation, no company would dare hire her. She advised Guanwen that if all else failed, she should apologize to her. Xianya promised to have Baidu put in a good word with HR and arrange a job for her. But Guanwen wouldn't let Xianya manipulate her like that. Back home, Guanwen grew angrier the more she thought about it. Her mind kept replaying Baidu and Xianya's words, until she began doubting herself. Realizing this, Guanwen angrily tossed the bottle into the trash can, and kicked it with a final burst of frustration. While Guanwen faced setbacks, her 2 best friends weren't faring much better. Chen Shan's boyfriend had invited his aunt and cousin over, without informing her beforehand. Not only that, but the 2 were freely using her belongings in her home. Chen Shan couldn't bring herself to get angry, considering her boyfriend's feelings. But the most infuriating part was that this aunt had come specifically to borrow money from her boyfriend. Chen Shan was deeply upset. Her boyfriend had already borrowed a significant amount from her and hadn't repaid it yet. Now he was borrowing again. Their money was meant for their wedding. If he kept lending it out, how would they afford to get married? Her boyfriend insisted it was his own money. His aunt's family had done him favors. What was wrong with helping them out? Seeing no point in arguing, Chen Shan slammed the door and stormed out. Guanwen's other friend, Jingyu lived the most comfortable life among the 3. Married to a CEO, she became a wealthy socialite. Her days were filled with shopping and beauty treatments. She seemed happy, yet she had her own troubles. Her marital life was deeply unsatisfying. Jingyu's husband was constantly working or in meetings. Every time they returned home and things started getting intimate, work would interrupt them. Even when she dressed up seductively, she couldn't move her workaholic husband. The daily loneliness of an empty bed made her miserable. That day, with nowhere else to go, Chen Shan sought refuge at Guanwen's place. But as soon as they entered, they saw a stranger in her home. Guanwen's first instinct was to call the police. Then she saw her mother walking out from inside. Turns out this was a blind date her mother had arranged. Seeing her daughter still single at 33, Guanwen always refused blind dates, claiming no time. This time, her mother brought the suitor home. Guanwen was furious, already stressed by work. her mother added to her chaos. Guanwen packed her bags and left with Chen Shan, but just as they descended the stairs, they spotted Jingyu dragging her suitcase to seek refuge at Guanwen's place. Turns out she'd planned a romantic getaway with her husband today, but he'd left for a business trip without a word. All her effort to dress up had been for nothing. Furious, she packed her bags and came to Guanwen's place, and so the three sisters headed off to Ninghai together. Meanwhile, Ding Li also arrived in Ninghai to help Guanwen step out of her comfort zone. Chen Shan deliberately cut up her swimsuit, encouraging her to shed her inhibitions and try new things. Under Chen Shan's urging, Guanwen headed to the pool intending to skinny dip, but just as she was about to undress, her ex-boyfriend Ding Li walked in. Hearing the sound, Guanwen turned to look. This move froze Ding Li in his tracks. Guanwen, panicking, stumbled toward the pool. Ding Li swiftly ran over to pull her up, but Guanwen, in a fit of frustration, shoved him into the water instead. This was their third encounter, and Ding Li suffered worse each time. Back in her room, Guanwen confronted Chen Shan. Seeing Chen Shan covered up so tightly only made her angrier. Meanwhile, Ding Li's fiasco with Guanwen had delayed his meeting with manager Chun from Yunha Group. This project was crucial for him, but because Ding Li stood him up, Manager Chen wouldn't answer his calls, so he had to find another solution. Then he thought of someone. Meanwhile, to help Guanwen vent her frustration, Chen Shan arranged a rock climbing activity for her. She didn't want to come at first, but remembering Ding Li's comment about her poor physique, she agreed. Yet after changing into her gear, she saw Ding Li had brought a beautiful woman to the same place. What infuriated her even more was that they had taken the route she had chosen. She had no choice but to pick another path. Watching Ding Li patiently instruct the woman in rock climbing, Guanwen's competitive spirit ignited. However, being a novice, she misunderstood the rules and climbed onto someone else's designated route. The instructor below warned her, but before Guanwen could adjust, the woman beside her knocked her off. Ding Li instinctively reached out to catch her. Once she was in a safe spot, Ding Li tossed Guanwen back down. Then the two resumed their bickering. The two friends paid no attention to Guanwen's mood, gossiping and watching the spectacle with amused expressions. That night, they dragged Guanwen to a bar for drinks. Drunk, Guanwen danced wildly on the dance floor. Just then, Ding Li arrived with a friend. But this wasn't a romantic date. Ding Li had a favor to ask. He wanted Lucy to help arrange a meeting with manager Chen. Surprisingly, Ding Li proved quite adept with women. A casual remark instantly won her over. He told her to think it over and headed to the restroom. As expected, his goal was swiftly achieved. Emerging from the restroom, Ding Li bumped into Guanwen again. Lucy emerged to find them entangled, clearly displeased. Seeing Ding Li scrambling to explain, Guanwen assumed he was in a romantic situation. She decided to play a prank on him to vent her frustration. Watching their playful scuffle, Lucy grew jealous and turned to leave. This infuriated Ding Li, but Guanwen was delighted she'd finally gotten one over on him. Her joy was short-lived, though, when she discovered the CEO of the company that hired her was the very person she'd recently offended. Guanwen froze in shock the moment she saw Ding Li. Not long ago, she'd crossed him, and now he was her boss. How did they end up at the same company? That story began after their trip. Guanwen had gained clarity during that vacation. Her ambition wasn't wrong, but she shouldn't doubt herself because of others' gossip. Guanwen had always been a resilient person. She never let her shortcomings become obstacles. She had a personal motto: I cannot allow myself to avoid difficulties. Persistence will always pay off. It was this very phrase that had sustained her all along. Once she understood this, Guanwen felt a sudden clarity and her fighting spirit reignited. So she cut off her long hair, determined to start anew. She then chose Wanli, a company in decline. From among several options, like Hongtian, Wanli belonged to President Zhang's Lia Group. Guanwen selected Wanli because she believed it would become the turning point in her career. During the interview, she showcased her strengths brilliantly and analyzed the company's weaknesses and strengths with remarkable clarity. Her confidence, wisdom, and competence won over the interviewers. Soon, Guanwen received Wanli's job offer. As she had said, this was the perfect opportunity to prove herself. Returning home, she discarded all her past honors, determined to start anew from scratch. Meanwhile, Ding Li, who had returned, wasn't idle either. Having missed his chance, he once again persuaded Lucy to arrange a meeting with manager Chen. Ultimately, he secured the Yunha project. The company had promised Ding Li that if he won the Yunha project, he would be promoted to director of Liang Group. However, President Zhang, wary of Ding Li's capabilities and fearing he might threaten his position within the group, found an excuse to transfer him to another company, Wanli. Upon receiving the transfer order from headquarters, Ding Li stormed to confront President Zhang. Ding Li understood President Zhang's true intent, to force him out of the group. He demanded President Zhang state his conditions. President Zhang replied that if Wanli doubled its performance, Ding Li would be reinstated to the group. In truth, President Zhang still valued Ding Li, but regretted that his talent threatened his own position. The next day, Wanwen was informed her job offer had been revoked. Per company policy, she would receive 6 months' salary as compensation. Wanwen demanded to know the reason. The interviewer stated she was highly capable and talented, but lacked sufficient experience working with clients and couldn't influence the general manager's decisions. Ding Li had just taken office and might be seeking a more seasoned investment recruiter. Wanwen realized she was merely following orders. To secure the job, she needed to negotiate with Ding Li. She went to the company parking lot to confront him. Upon meeting, Wanwen immediately accused Ding Li of being unprofessional. Ding Li clarified it wasn't personal, he genuinely felt she wasn't the right fit. Wanwen believed Ding Li's hostility stemmed from that exchange program spot during their student days. She thought it was petty for a grown man to hold a grudge over that incident all these years. Ding Li didn't want to argue with Wanwen. Sure enough, Ding Li froze upon hearing President Zhang's name. Wanwen declared that even if he rejected her job offer, she'd still find a way into Wanli, but whether she'd end up on the same level as him then was anyone's guess. Ding Li said he didn't believe her, but deep down, he was already afraid. He knew Wanwen had the ability to persuade President Zhang. He just disliked her aggressive tone. His current situation was precarious. Having more allies was better than having more enemies. Realizing this, Ding Li allowed Wanwen to start work the next day. Yet Wanwen faced an even greater crisis upon entering the new company. Not only did she have to tackle the mess left by the former director, but she also had to negotiate with the brand owners. But with TL reportedly closing stores, they certainly wouldn't agree. Left with no choice, Wanwen had to approach her arch-rival for negotiations. She pleaded for their support for Wanli, appealing to past connections. How proud Wanwen had once been. Now he was groveling for Wanli's sake. How could Xianya miss this chance to mock him? Wanwen could only swallow his pride. Seeing his rival reduced to this, Xianya felt immense satisfaction, but she wouldn't let the opportunity to humiliate him pass. She demanded Wanli waive TL's rent, guarantee their sales volume, and subsidize 50% of their renovation costs. Faced with such shameless demands, Wanwen hadn't even spoken when Luo De erupted. Is this a partnership negotiation? It's outright extortion. Yet no matter how harsh Xianya's words, Wanwen sat there obediently, not uttering a single word. At that moment, Bai Di delivered the verdict. Since Wanli can't meet their demands, TL will vacate the store next week. With the negotiations failing, Wanwen and the others could only return to the company. Back at the office, Wanwen instructed his team to analyze why the negotiations failed. Luo Di accused Xianya of deliberately making things difficult for them. Wanwen understood her tactics, but he was deeply dissatisfied with his assistant's performance today. They represented Wanli, not themselves. He told them to set aside their pride. In the workplace, if you're weak, you must humble yourself. Only when you're strong can you hold your head high. He then instructed Luo De and the others to consider what the most favorable offer they could present to TL might be. They would draft a new strategy. Wanwen would never give up until the very last moment. When faced with difficulties, she would exhaust every possible solution. This was how adults handled problems. Wanwen herself wasn't idle either. Working late into the night, after finishing his tasks, Ding Li saw Wanwen, exhausted, asleep at her desk. This inevitably reminded him of the past. Wanwen truly hadn't changed a bit from before. For her work, she completely neglected self-care. Back then, as Wanwen's boyfriend, he had the right to care for her. But now, it seemed he no longer had that privilege. He considered slipping away quietly. Yet, unable to shake his unease, he gently woke her. Meanwhile, Jingyu panicked upon learning her husband would travel with his female secretary. Last time, she'd deliberately left a lipstick mark on his shirt as a declaration of war. This time, who knew what tricks she had up her sleeve? Sure enough, after work, the secretary invited the CEO to dinner at a restaurant under the pretense of discussing work matters. The CEO agreed without a second thought, but then Jingyu arrived. She would never give the secretary a chance to get close to her husband. She sat down right in front of him. The CEO, who had been staring at the menu, thought it was the secretary, but when he looked up, he saw his own wife. Just as their affection was deepening, the secretary, freshly changed, appeared. Jingyu graciously invited the secretary to join their meal. Before she could speak, the CEO ordered her to leave immediately. He stated that work matters could wait until tomorrow. Right now, he only wanted to dine with his wife. The secretary was furious at that moment, yet she feigned composure and departed. Inside the room, Jingyu and her husband shared tender moments. Unexpectedly, the secretary rushed back, claiming a client contract had encountered issues and demanding his urgent attention. He instructed Jingyu to rest while he handled the work. Jingyu thoughtfully helped her husband put on his coat, and then publicly asserted her ownership in front of the secretary. The secretary could only storm off angrily. Meanwhile, Guanwen learned Ding Li knew the newly appointed investment director at Hengtian. She decided to have Ding Li make a courtesy call to temporarily block the contract between TL and Hengtian, buying her more time. Ding Li appeared reluctant on the surface, but the moment she stepped out of the company, she immediately called her good friend to ask him to find out where Hengtian's investment director was. Her friend knew it was for Guanwen. Ding Li, whose intentions had been seen through, felt a bit embarrassed. Meanwhile, Guanwen worried Ding Li's negotiations might not go smoothly, so she worked through the night to prepare a plan B. But she was still overthinking things. With Ding Li's capabilities, there was nothing she couldn't handle. Ding Li knew Guanwen's temperament. She wouldn't rest until results were achieved, so no matter how late he negotiated, he still called Guanwen. Only upon learning the deal was sealed did Guanwen finally breathe a sigh of relief. Meanwhile, since Guanwen's departure, Xianya had thrown TL's brand expansion into complete disarray. Bai De was deeply dissatisfied with her. Though they were lovers, Xianya's competence fell far short of Guanwen's. Just then, word came that Hengtian would suspend their partnership. The reason? Hengtian, Zhenglian and Wanli were developing a new collaboration plan for TL. Xianya was furious. These two companies had never had financial dealings before. Otherwise, Wanli wouldn't be in its current state. Bai De knew Guanwen must have been involved. For now, he could only agree to temporarily halt the store closures. Thanks to Guanwen's efforts over the past few days, all merchants previously slated for closure had agreed to stay open. Such an achievement so soon after her appointment made everyone look at her with new respect. But just as Guanwen was presenting the investment department's next plan, Ding Li began mocking her again. The two started trading barbs in the meeting. Guanwen, thoroughly prepared, gave Ding Li no opening. Finally, Guanwen delivered her conclusion. For Wanli to surpass Hengtian, it must forge its own distinctive identity. Only by becoming truly unique, making people feel this is something only Wanli can offer, can it gain a competitive edge. Guanwen's plan was to complete the first round of tenant upgrades within 3 months. Ding Li hadn't anticipated Guanwen's proposal would be so flawless. Left speechless, Ding Li rose and walked out. A colleague nearby then reminded Guanwen, no one had ever dared publicly rebuke Ding Li like that before. In truth, Ding Li's obstruction during the meeting served as a crucial rehearsal for Guanwen. The board's veteran members would pose far more demanding questions. If she couldn't even pass Ding Li's scrutiny, how could she possibly convince the board? Yet no one would ever know Ding Li's true intentions. Upon entering his office, Ding Li found Guanwen scribbling furiously on the whiteboard. Ding Li teased her bluntly about slacking off. Guanwen didn't bother arguing. She stated that only by recognizing the gap between herself and others could she improve. Therefore, Wanli needed to achieve greater transformation and progress next month to gain the confidence to attract investors. Though unsure if her methods would work, she had to try. Ding Li strongly agreed with Guanwen's perspective. The woman he admired was exceptional. Ding Li kept striving, while President Zhang remained constantly vigilant. His secretary periodically briefed him on Ding Li's activities. Upon learning Ding Li had approached the Hengtian director, President Zhang immediately issued a warning to Hengtian. Yet he was puzzled Ding Li's temperament wouldn't align with seeking Hengtian's help. This wasn't his usual approach. President Zhang still held Guanwen in high regard, seeing her as a woman with sharp insights, now serving as Ding Li's assistant. This development instantly sparked a sense of crisis in President Zhang. Ding Li might not even realize how much he's been fixated on Guanwen lately. He constantly craves updates on her whereabouts. Upon learning the investment promotion department was meeting with other divisions, he rushed over immediately. After scanning the room and not spotting Guanwen, he prepared to leave, only to bump into Guanwen as she returned. Not wanting his intentions exposed, Ding Li cut straight to the point. He assigned Guanwen to work with other departments ostensibly to assist them. But in reality, he had integrated the marketing operations and business development departments. In front of Ding Li, Guanwen felt no need for modesty or concealment. Yet Ding Li worried. Wasn't Guanwen afraid her employees would resign en masse? Guanwen wasn't afraid at all. She had already devised a solution. The next day, the Wanli Mall held its grand opening event. The venue was designed around an iris theme, creating a fresh and refined atmosphere that drew crowds eager to take photos. Seeing the bustling crowds, Ding Li was thoroughly impressed with the event planning. Noticing Ding Li's delight, the marketing director quickly claimed credit for the creative concept. Just then, Guanwen's voice carried from nearby. I actually developed this event strategy. But instead of taking credit, Guanwen immediately sought out the client. Your daily foot traffic has increased by 35%. This not only signified Wanli's strong performance, but also represented its future positioning. Henceforth, Wanli would embody the serene and carefree essence of the iris. Upon hearing Guanwen's explanation, everyone realized this was the true reason behind choosing the iris. This left the marketing director standing nearby feeling utterly embarrassed. Ding Li swiftly stepped forward to greet the client. After hearing Guanwen's presentation, the client expressed great satisfaction with Wanli and expressed willingness to partner with our company. However, when Ding Li learned the client was a restaurant owner, she visibly deflated. She felt Guanwen's client targeting seemed off-mark. After work, Ding Li sought Guanwen out to discuss this. Just as Guanwen was about to get into the car, Ding Li swiftly grabbed the briefcase from the passenger seat. Unexpectedly, Guanwen sat in the back, treating her like a driver. Ding Li slammed on the gas pedal, and only cheered up when he saw Guanwen bump her head. They then began discussing the business development plan. Ding Li argued she shouldn't focus on the catering sector, as it offered low returns and wasted time. Why not strike while the iron was hot and pursue interested clients? Guanwen replied that finding clients was like dating. The one who makes the first move loses. She admitted she could reach out to brands herself, but that would make Wanli passive and powerless. Guanwen wanted to solidify the catering foundation, to elevate customer quality through dining, and ultimately have those brands come to her. Ding Li slammed on the brakes and made Guanwen get out. But once out, Guanwen froze. Where was she? Just as she waited by the roadside, a car pulled up. Turns out Ding Li had called her a ride earlier. But when a woman is angry, she can't see a man's kindness. Guanwen skipped work to hunt for hunks at the gym. Ding Li rushed over upon learning this. It turned out just days prior, while recruiting partners, an assistant encountered a notoriously difficult client, the gym owner himself. Securing him for Wanli would smooth future partnerships. His sole requirement? A passion for fitness. Multiple companies had approached him for partnerships, all ending in failure. The ever-competitive Guanwen immediately sought him out. She wanted to see just how difficult this manager she really was to meet. But Guanwen, who never exercised, was already panting after just a few steps. Manager, she took one look at Guanwen and knew she wasn't athletic. He voluntarily stopped. Guanwen thought he was done and invited him to sit down and chat. But then he started lifting weights, and just like that, Guanwen was put through the ringer by manager Shi all day. The next day, Guanwen was so sore she could barely move her limbs. Even getting a glass of water was a struggle. Ding Li noticed and grabbed the water bottle for her. He casually asked, "Did the car pick you up smoothly last time?" Hearing this, Guanwen flared up. She retaliated by splashing water all over him. Then she limped back to the office. Luo De thoughtfully brought her some ointment and advised, "Just let it go. There are so many brands out there anyone will do." But Guanwen declared she always charged headlong into challenges. Only, she hadn't yet found a way to convince him, so she resolved to visit him again tonight. Luo De said nothing more, merely bidding her farewell with 2 words, "Take care." When Guanwen reappeared at the gym, manager she looked utterly astonished. No one would show their face after being put through his ringer, let alone by a membership. This made him reconsider his opinion of Guanwen, but he was eager to see how long she could endure. Finally, when Guanwen collapsed, manager she ended her workout. Thus, Guanwen persevered for 2 weeks. During this time, She didn't discuss work with manager she simply trained. Truthfully, manager Xi's resolve was already wavering. One day, Guanwen limped into work and ran into Dingley. He was curious about what Guanwen had been up to lately, leaving early and coming home late every day, pushing herself so hard. Later, he learned the truth from Luo De. That very evening, he went to the gym. Seeing the two of them so close together, Dingley felt a pang of jealousy. He quietly approached Guanwen, noticing her form was incorrect and could lead to injury. He stepped in to correct her movements, but Guanwen wasn't having any of it. Dingley gave up and went to work out elsewhere. Soon after, manager Xi returned. Dingley hurried over to greet him. Upon learning Dingley was also from Wanli, manager Xi visibly frowned. Dingley quickly explained he was just there to work out. Inviting him to join Wanli was Guanwen's responsibility. However, from a professional standpoint, he greatly admired Guanwen's capabilities. He especially agreed with her positioning and direction for business development. Manager Xi also held high regard for Guanwen, yet some reservations lingered in his mind. Guanwen articulated precisely those concerns manager Xi harbored, assuring him that reviewing their proposal would undoubtedly reshape his perspective on Wanli. With Dingley's support and Guanwen's sincere approach, they ultimately won manager Xi over and secured the partnership. Dingley was in high spirits. His friend couldn't resist teasing him. Back when you two broke up, was it really just over a study abroad spot? The university offered one overseas scholarship annually, and Dingley and Guanwen, both top students, became rivals. Though they were dating, Guanwen insisted on fair competition, so Guanwen immersed herself in studies, neglecting Dingley's feelings. However, when submitting their thesis, Guanwen spotted an issue in Dingley's work and reported it to the professor. Dingley happened to overhear this, and mistakenly believed Guanwen would stop at nothing to win. Perhaps due to youthful naivety, he couldn't comprehend Guanwen's actions and chose to break up. But what Dingley didn't know was that Guanwen had also made a request to the professor that she would withdraw from the opportunity to study abroad. She felt that although Dingley's paper had flaws, his research breadth and depth surpassed her own. He was the most suitable candidate. But when Dingley misunderstood her, Guanwen didn't explain. She felt that if they couldn't even have basic trust, there was no point in being together. Dingley also believed he had been very immature back then. He thought he would never forgive her for the rest of his life. But recently, witnessing Guanwen's self-harming and self-destructive behavior made him realize he could understand and forgive the Guanwen of the past. He even found himself admiring the Guanwen of today. The next day, while dining with colleagues, Guanwen overheard that Dingley was facing trouble. She rushed off without finishing her meal. Guanwen was puzzled with the company's performance improving significantly lately. What difficulties could he possibly have? Luo De then revealed that Dingley had actually offended President Zhang when he joined Wanli. Upon hearing Wanli's recovery, President Zhang imposed a new performance metric, rental income targets. Failure to meet them would mean demotion or even dismissal for Dingley. Guanwen grew deeply concerned for Dingley. After work, she waited for him in the parking lot. Only now did Guanwen realize why he'd been so insistent on recruiting her for retail. This time, she wanted to help Dingley, but Dingley refused her offer. Her goodwill rejected. Guanwen couldn't help but vent to her best friend. Yet Guanwen wouldn't stand by while Dingley was bullied. The next day, she called a team meeting and shifted their leasing focus entirely to retail. Not only did it offer higher profits and quicker returns, it was the best way to revive Wanli. However, the few interested parties were mostly agents who couldn't provide much support. The remaining 20 major brands were merely watching from the sidelines. At this point, Guanwen cut straight to the core issue. TL held significant influence within the light luxury sector. These 20 hesitant brands were essentially monitoring TL's moves. Just as everyone was at a loss, Guanwen proposed another bold idea: get TL to renew its lease at Wanli. Easier said than done. Had it not been for Hung Tian's intervention last time, TL would have closed its doors long ago. Compounded by Guanwen's relationship with Xianya, this task became even more daunting. Meanwhile, Dingley was also strategizing. He met with Hung Tian's director again, ostensibly to share grievances but actually to probe their situation. President Zhang had personally spoken with him earlier, emphasizing that Hung Tian couldn't afford to lose to Wanda. On Guanwen's end, she successfully secured a meeting with Bai Di for negotiations. But just then, Guanwen received an urgent call from his mother, saying his brother was near death and demanding he return immediately. With no choice, Guanwen handed his work to his assistant and turned to Xianya. quickly apologizing and explaining the situation. Yet when Guanwen arrived home, he nearly fainted from shock. It turned out to be all his brother's prank, just to scare their mother. But Guanwen would pay the price for his brother's stunt. The very next day upon arriving at the office, Guanwen received a complaint letter from Xianya, accusing her of abandoning her post. It turned out this was yet another deliberate act by Xianya. In reality, Ide had suddenly asked Xianya to notify Guanwen to cancel the meeting that day. But after learning Guanwen had to leave early for an urgent matter, Xianya failed to inform her. Shortly after, Guanwen was summoned to Ding Li's office. This time, Ding Li was genuinely furious. He couldn't fathom why Guanwen would make such a basic mistake at this critical juncture. Guanwen didn't try to justify herself. She readily admitted her error. She knew that if this matter wasn't handled properly, all her previous efforts would be wasted, so she assured Ding Li she would resolve it. In the end, Ding Li gave her 2 days, but before Guanwen could take action, the group headquarters received word that the issue must be resolved today. Otherwise, Guanwen would have to resign. Ding Li knew whose order this was. He prepared to head to headquarters, but as soon as he stepped out of the office, Luo De stopped him. Luo De explained that Guanwen had left early during the negotiations because her brother had gotten into trouble. Learning the reason, Ding Li felt deeply regretful. Now, he just wanted to know how Guanwen was doing. He called her, but the line wouldn't connect. Meanwhile, Guanwen was negotiating with Xianya. Unexpectedly, Guanwen demanded Xianya issue a statement, claiming she had mistaken the meeting time herself. Leading to this outcome, Xianya was stunned. Why should she ruin her own career to accommodate Guanwen? Guanwen proposed a deal to Xianya. She knew that since taking over her position, Xianya hadn't opened a single new store. Her bargaining chip? A promise to help Xianya meet her performance targets. Xianya felt a flicker of temptation, yet she refused to let Guanwen off the hook. Fuming, she found no words and vented her rage by splashing water. But Guanwen remained unperturbed. If such petty retaliation made Xianya happy, she didn't care. However, she demanded Guanwen's explanatory email by noon the next day. At that moment, Ding Li emerged from headquarters, deep in thought. He had paid an unknown price to persuade President Zhang to grant Guanwen one more day. If the matter wasn't resolved by the end of the next workday, Guanwen would have to leave. The next day, Guanwen still hadn't received Xianya's response. Ding Li grew increasingly anxious for her. Just then, Guanwen received a message from Xianya. Simultaneously, Ding Li received an apology letter from TL. Ding Li was curious how she managed it. Guanwen was about to leave after a few perfunctory words. When Ding Li called her back, he hoped she wouldn't push herself so hard in the future. If there were problems, they could discuss them together. Ding Li found himself growing increasingly protective and concerned for her. Now that the crisis was averted, and their target was no longer TL, Guanwen had a new plan. Guanwen brought Luo De to Hengtian Mall. They happened to spot a brand representative exiting the mall. Guanwen recognized them as agents for the hottest streetwear brand. Her mission today was to persuade them to open a flagship store at Wanyan Mall. Luo De suggested calling ahead for an appointment. Guanwen believed boldness was paramount in business development. She grabbed her business card and approached them. After a brief introduction, she got straight to the point. Unexpectedly, they refused outright. They still hoped to open their first flagship store in a mall with heavy luxury brands, but Hengtian Mall's reputation had plummeted due to rising rents, while their brand portfolio at Wanda Plaza still needed improvement. Their team was highly professional and worked tirelessly. Guanwen mentioned they had just signed manager Shi from the fitness industry. The other party was surprised Wanda Plaza could land such a major brand. Seeing they were still hesitant, Guanwen promptly requested their contact information to schedule a visit to the Wanli Mall. Later, Guanwen led her team to inspect Wanli Mall. This scene was witnessed by Ding Li, who happened to be passing by. There was an unspoken understanding between the two. This made Ding Li feel inexplicably proud. Seeing Guanwen's expression, Ding Li knew the negotiations had gone smoothly. Soon after, Hong Tian publicly accused Ding Li at a group meeting of lacking professional ethics, even poaching brands from their own group. Though President Zhang disapproved of Ding Li, he had no recourse but to suppress Ding Li through performance metrics. Recently, Wanli was planning a Goddess Day event, handled by the marketing department. Their flashy proposal immediately drew Guanwen's skepticism. First, while positioning it as a goddess event, they chose an anime theme, with the primary audience being teenagers under 20. This clearly clashed with the Goddess Festival theme. Second, the entire decor featured candy-colored schemes that appeared overly flashy. It felt less like a goddess festival and more suited for Children's Day. But Guanwen didn't just point out the problems. She also offered optimization suggestions to the marketing department. Everyone listened and agreed wholeheartedly. After the meeting, her assistant worried if she might face retaliation today. Guanwen remained unfazed. Their conversation was overheard by Ding Li behind them. He approached to remind Guanwen that both marketing and business development were vital departments at Wanli. He hoped their collaboration would be effective and smooth. But Guanwen didn't believe she had done anything wrong. Soon after, Ding Li's concerns materialized. That day, Lei Jun announced in a meeting that several brands led by TL had refused to participate in the Goddess Festival event. The reason? The business development department had previously promised to help boost their sales, but now demanded they fund the event themselves, leaving them dissatisfied. Guanwen and Lei Jun immediately clashed. Ding Li swiftly interrupted them. The very thing he dreaded most had happened. This event was crucial for Wanli, and their last chance to boost performance. If this event failed, it would be the entire company. Ding Li's fury silenced everyone, but Guanwen felt she hadn't done anything wrong. She went to the restroom to confront Ding Li. Ding Li reminded Guanwen again. A failed event might mean little to a veteran employee with 3 years at the company, but she was still on probation. With only 6 months left, Guanwen was jolted back to reality by Ding Li's words. Meanwhile, news of the Women's Day fiasco quickly reached President Zhang's ears. This was the perfect opportunity to sanction Ding Li. The more capable Ding Li proved, the more President Zhang wanted to take him down. He wouldn't keep anyone who threatened his position. Ding Li was confident Guanwen would succeed, but Yan Cheng warned him not to be too optimistic. What if someone was sabotaging things behind the scenes? Ding Li, unaware of this, grew concerned and called Guanwen, but the line was dead. This time, he panicked. He ordered his driver to turn back to the company. Guanwen was preparing to attend a dinner gathering when Ding Li, arriving urgently, intercepted her and said she needn't go, he would attend in her place. Guanwen was displeased upon hearing this. Ding Li offered no explanation to Guanwen, only stating that such business dinners weren't suitable for women. With that, he left. Ding Li's actions infuriated Guanwen. She instructed Luo De to return first while she followed behind. At the dinner, Ding Li drank heavily to secure the brand partner's support for Wanli. Finally, Bai De couldn't pretend anymore. He hadn't come here for business negotiations in the first place. He intended to keep Ding Li drinking. Several assistants rushed to help, but Bai De refused their assistance. He stated he wanted Ding Li to agree to participate in the Goddess Festival event. Today, this drink is solely Ding Li's responsibility. Outside the door, Guanwen waited anxiously. It had been so long, yet the gathering still hadn't ended. Just then, someone emerged from the room and told the waiter someone had vomited inside, instructing him to clean it up immediately. When the door opened again, Guanwen saw Ding Li slumped over the table. She rushed in, claiming she'd been delayed by a meeting. She then prepared to take a penalty shot. How could Bai De let her off so easily? He poured Guanwen a full glass as well. Guanwen deliberately made her hand shake, spilling all the wine onto Bai De's face. Enraged, Bai De was about to strike Guanwen when Ding Li stepped in to stop him. It turned out Ding Li had been pretending to be drunk all along. On the way back, Guanwen felt awkward. She quickly explained that she'd thought he was genuinely drunk, and rushed in because she feared he might cause trouble. Ding Li, however, refused to admit he'd come because he was worried about her. Unexpectedly, the driver couldn't stomach their lies and suddenly made a sharp turn. The atmosphere instantly turned ambiguous. Fortunately, Guanwen was more sober and pushed Ding Li away. Back home, Ding Li recalled his earlier exchange with Guanwen and found himself laughing at his own frustration. He had come precisely because he was worried about her, yet he refused to admit it. But in doing so, he had also clarified his own feelings. The next day, Guanwen met with the agent closest to Bai De. The agent flatly refused, insisting he was just a good friend of Bai De. Guanwen then proposed that if he could participate in the upcoming Goddess Festival event, Wanli would cover all expenses. Fearing skepticism, Guanwen produced the agreement on the spot. His approval would activate the deal immediately, though the terms were generous. Mr. Zhang remained hesitant. Guanwen then revealed there was only one spot available for full sponsorship. Finally, Guanwen expressed his admiration for Mr. Zhang, surprised he would sacrifice company interests for personal connections. What would happen if his boss found out? After hesitating, Mr. Zhang agreed. Thus, Guanwen successfully secured the first distributor. Sure enough, when the second distributor learned that even Mr. Zhang Baida's closest ally had conceded, and that he could receive half the subsidy, he signed the contract with Guanwen on the spot. Meanwhile, Baida, who had been waiting for a long time, noticed they hadn't arrived. She called to inquire and discovered they had already left. In the end, Baida had no choice but to accept Guanwen's terms. By the time Guanwen returned to the office, it was already late. Suddenly, the power went out, and footsteps echoed through the building. Terrified, she grabbed a kettle and hid behind the door. As the footsteps drew nearer, she swung the kettle to strike whoever was approaching. That person was Ding Li. Since realizing his feelings last time, he'd resolved to pursue Guanwen again, but not seeing her all day had kept him out so late. Little did he know, Guanwen's next two actions instantly flustered Ding Li. Turns out she'd only asked him to carry water. Though he grumbled, his actions were eager. Lately, Guanwen's mother, driven by some unknown stress, kept pressuring her to go on blind dates. Left with no choice, Guanwen reluctantly agreed. This thrilled her mother, who now introduced suitors daily. To appease her mother, Guanwen dressed up meticulously for the meeting. The suitor looked surprised she didn't match the photos at all. He clearly disliked Guanwen. Just then, Ding Li happened to pass by. Seeing Guanwen's unusual outfit piqued his curiosity. He instantly understood the situation. Knowing Guanwen loved snail noodles, Ding Li treated the entire company to a breakfast of love, including a box of snail noodles reserved only for the investment department. But his goodwill wasn't appreciated. Guanwen had Luo De send it back. When he learned Guanwen went to the gym, he followed her there. He happened to see a man harassing her and stepped in to help. This Women's Day event was a huge success. The company threw a celebratory banquet to mark the occasion. Ding Li was naturally on the guest list. He didn't really want to go, but when he learned the entire management team would attend, Ding Li promptly agreed. Then the secretary informed him that only Guanwen would be there. Ding Li immediately changed his tune, saying he had a conference call later and wouldn't be attending. Feeling down, Ding Li met his buddy for a game of basketball, but his distracted mind was nowhere near the game. His friend urged Ding Li to be more proactive. Learning Guanwen had been hitting the gym lately, he arrived early at the fitness center. Just as Guanwen was about to start her run, Ding Li showed up and invited her out for snail noodles after her workout. Ding Li's strange behavior made Guanwen wonder if he was under immense work pressure lately. Otherwise, why would he be acting so out of character? Ding Li's romantic woes weren't his only problem. New crises were brewing at work. The success of the Goddess Festival event had doubled Wan Li's sales performance. President Zhang grew deeply worried he might lose his bet with Ding Li, so President Zhang began using his connections to sabotage Ding Li behind the scenes. Even if it meant sacrificing the group's interests, he was determined to cut off Ding Li's livelihood. That day, Guanwen was on a date with Jingyu when she happened to see her husband meeting with a client. He went over to greet them, only to discover the client was a brand preparing to open in their Wanli Mall. The client grew visibly flustered upon seeing Guanwen. Noticing the unease on both their faces, Guanwen instantly grasped the gravity of the situation. She recalled Jingyu mentioning her husband was planning a new mall. She immediately asked Jingyu for the new mall's location. Learning it was right next to Wanli Mall, she confirmed her suspicions. She then made an excuse to leave. Once outside, she immediately called her assistant back to the office for a meeting. No one had ever seen Guanwen so tense. After reviewing the report, Guanwen grew anxious. Most clients were already at the signing stage, yet one had delayed signing for a full month. She ordered her assistants to accelerate the signing process with the brand. From now on, they must report signing progress every 2 days. Any unusual behavior from the brand must be reported to her immediately. After the meeting, Guanwen kept Luo De behind and instructed her to investigate the new mall's background. Luo De glanced at the materials and stated she knew the mall was developed by a small-scale developer. Though located near Wanli, its quality was mediocre and not worth worrying about. Guanwen reminded Luo De to conduct the investigation discreetly, keeping it confidential. What they hadn't anticipated was that this unassuming new mall would eventually become Wanli's fiercest competitor, and 60% of their tenant brands overlapped with Wanli's. But Ding Li thought it wasn't a big deal. Guanwen cautioned him not to underestimate them. They started in real estate and were very wealthy. Plus, they offered brands 100% renovation subsidies. But Ding Li believed brands wouldn't just focus on business terms, without considering the mall's background. Compared to them, Wanli was more reliable. Guanwen knew they'd hired Zhang Bin, a high-profile leasing consultant in the industry, at great expense. Dingley recognized the name Zhang Bin immediately. It was the leasing consultant his good friend had recommended earlier. Back then, trusting only Guanwen, he hadn't hired him. Little did he know this would now become a stumbling block. As far as he knew, Zhang Bin only took on major projects backed by powerful investors. Why would he take on this unknown developer now? He asked his friend to arrange a meeting. Unexpectedly, the other party hadn't given up on Felicity at all. From his resolute attitude, Dingley knew someone was definitely pulling strings behind the scenes. If it was President Zhang, that would be troublesome. But Dingley wanted to know exactly what he was up to. Upon arriving at the group headquarters, however, the secretary informed him President Zhang was unavailable. Dingley had anticipated President Zhang wouldn't see him, so he deliberately sat waiting outside the office door. He even had lunch delivered by his secretary. This inevitably sparked whispers among the staff, and those very whispers were overheard by President Zhang's secretary. Shortly after, Dingley was invited into the office. Dingley directly requested an increased budget. The cunning President Zhang refused, claiming he couldn't justify it to shareholders. Dingley declared he'd resolve the matter even without corporate funding. Just then, he received a text from Guanwen. A fish had taken the bait. That fish was manager Hua, who had previously supported them. But now, seeing Wanli in trouble, he sought to profit from the crisis. He offered to trade the mall layout plan for Wanli in exchange for full renovation subsidies. Facing manager Hua's demand, Dingley flatly refused. Guanwen promptly rose to leave in solidarity. But before departing, Dingley uttered a few words that instantly swayed manager Hua. The pair then headed to the office to analyze Felicity's mall layout. Sure enough, Guanwen discovered from the lease agreement that Felicity's rent was a full 10% higher than Wanli's. The pair then seamlessly identified a breakthrough point. They proceeded to negotiate with the brand, promising a slight reduction in rent. The brand found the offer tempting. But for a newly opening store, renovation costs were the major expense. They insisted that if Wanli could provide renovation subsidies, they would sign immediately. Guanwen and Dingley firmly refused this demand. Dingley then analyzed the pros and cons between the two options, urging him not to focus solely on immediate gains but to plan for the long term. They stopped at the right moment, knowing when to quit while ahead. After leaving the company, Dingley felt they didn't need to approach other brands for now. Dingley intended to use rent as leverage against the other party, because he knew that as a businessman, profit always came first. A full renovation subsidy was already the limit. Further rent reductions were impossible. Sure enough, when the brand demanded a rent reduction, it was flatly refused. Zhang Bin, standing nearby, urged the other party to return first, suggesting everything could be negotiated. Ultimately, persuaded by Zhang Bin, Subo agreed to a 5% rent reduction. Dingley never imagined the other side would be so financially powerful. Since that was the case, Wanli would lower it a bit more. Guanwen was concerned about how to explain this to the group, but Dingley believed that if they conceded now, Wanli would lose its chance. At the last moment, he couldn't bear to give up. Meanwhile, Subo, learning he must also reduce rent, was furious. At this point, Zhang Bin saw no reason to hold back. He directly revealed President Zhang's request. Only then did Subo realize this was an internal power struggle within Liang Group. He'd been manipulated to seize Wanli's resources. They were willing to pay the price of 20 years without recouping costs. This instantly put Wanli on the defensive. Dingley hadn't anticipated Feilong City being so reckless. Worst of all, the brand had already decided to abandon Wanli in favor of Feilong City. Guanwen proposed switching plans, but Dingley refused. Transitioning from a trendy luxury shopping mall to a community-based commercial project would render all their previous efforts futile. They didn't want to give up, yet lacked the capital to compete. After a night of deliberation, they still couldn't find a solution. Then, a sudden flash of inspiration struck Guanwen. Excitedly, she told Dingley she'd found a solution. She immediately called manager Shi at the gym. Once he agreed, they sprang into action. The next day, Guanwen met with Subo to discuss a mutually beneficial partnership. Subo perked up at the proposal. He knew full well that while he'd secured it would take 20 years to recoup his investment. A mutually beneficial approach was naturally welcome. Guanwen continued, explaining that each mall excelled in distinct areas. Wanli specialized in international luxury brands, while Philael, with its larger space, was better suited for young, trendy brands. Su Bo grew displeased upon hearing this. However, to demonstrate her sincerity, Guanwen offered to introduce manager Shi to Filial. Su Bo was deeply tempted by the proposal. As a businessman, profit always came first. Moreover, Guanwen's win-win plan offered him nothing but advantages. He promptly stated he would give it serious consideration. The next day, Su Bo came to Dingli to sign the contract. He then publicly praised Guanwen's capabilities in front of Dingli. This made Dingli feel a sense of crisis. He had witnessed their interaction last time, which seemed like that of old friends who had known each other for years. But the real trouble was yet to come. Dingli witnessed Su Bo presenting Guanwen with a tube of lipstick, actually a gift Jingyu had arranged for Su Bo to give Guanwen. Before Dingli could piece together the situation, Guanwen approached him to request time off for a trip to clear her head. To his shock, his secretary revealed she was traveling with Su Bo. Dingli instantly panicked. Just as the two were deep in conversation, Dingli walked over. Soon after, Guanwen arrived at their destination with Su Bo. Chen Shan and Jingyu had already arrived ahead of them. They had planned this trip specifically to help the two reconcile. The next day, Guanwen and Chen Shan took Jingyu out to relax, coincidentally stumbling upon the local water festival. But when they spotted Su Bo there too, everything suddenly clicked. The lively Chen Shan immediately joined the fray. Su Bo had specially prepared weapons for his wife, but Jingyu wouldn't forgive him so easily. She turned away haughtily. Seeing this, Guanwen hurried after her, hiding nearby. Guanwen watched them reconcile and felt overjoyed. But just then, someone attacked her from behind. She turned to find it was Dingli. Dingli spotted Su Bo with another woman. He boldly grabbed Guanwen and demanded, "Who's that girl with Su Bo?" Guanwen replied, "That's Su Bo's wife." Dingli was overjoyed upon hearing this. It turned out to be a misunderstanding all along. In the afternoon, Su Bo organized a treasure hunt to create an opportunity for Guanwen and Dingli. The group set off and quickly left the two behind. They had long seen through Dingli's intentions and deliberately helped the couple. However, during the treasure hunt, Guanwen slipped and tumbled down the hillside. Seeing this, Dingli jumped down after her, injuring his back in the process. Guanwen also sprained her ankle. Dingli sent Su Bo a distress message. Meanwhile, the friends who learned of Guanwen's predicament showed no urgency whatsoever. They were actually happy for her. Before they knew it, night had fallen, and no rescue had arrived. The two began reminiscing about their university days, specifically the thesis that had led to their breakup. Dingli clarified that his anger back then hadn't been about the thesis itself, but about her purpose in reporting him to the professor. Guanwen was so furious she wanted to hit him. She never imagined Dingli had viewed her this way all these years. She then revealed the truth behind the incident. Dingli froze upon hearing it. Guanwen never imagined she'd been seen as such a villain in Dingli's eyes. Dingli deeply regretted not confronting her back then. This misunderstanding had cost them all these years apart. Seizing the moment, Dingli confessed he didn't want to miss out again. Just as they were about to rekindle their sweetness, an unwelcome guest shattered the moment. Dingli felt deeply upset inside. Soon after, they were pulled to safety. Only then did Guanwen realize Dingli's waist was perfectly fine. The two sisters nearby also noticed the situation between them, but Guanwen wouldn't agree so easily. Dingli set a probation period for her, and during this probation, no one at the company could know. If she didn't perform well, she could be returned at any time. Then the two began their romantic journey. Women in love truly become little girls. At this moment, Guanwen bore no resemblance to the formidable female boss. Dingli, in turn, showered her with affection, buying her anything she expressed interest in. Love truly knows no age. Unfortunately, their happiness was short-lived as trouble erupted at the company. To spare Guanwen's feelings, Dingli kept it from her. The next day, he left her a message and boarded a flight back. Guanwen grew deeply concerned. Certain something major had happened, she immediately contacted Luo De, instructing her to investigate the situation. Luo De reported that a customer had caused a disturbance the previous day and was later escorted away by security. Guanwen suspected the matter wasn't that simple. She instructed Luo De to gather all documentation related to the brand supplier. She then booked an afternoon flight to return immediately. Dingli promptly reached out to contacts to investigate. After being accused of selling counterfeit bags, they had tested the items and confirmed they were indeed fake. Dingli knew someone was orchestrating this behind the scenes. He now had to return to Wanli to resolve two critical issues. Just as Dingli arrived at the company, Guanwen rushed back. Dingli was surprised. Hadn't he told her to stay a few more days? Upon hearing the news, Guanwen immediately grasped the severity of the situation. If this couldn't be resolved, it would reflect poorly on their business development department. Ding Li had kept it from her to protect her. Guanwen was confident that together, no problem was insurmountable, so the two began working separately. Guanwen reviewed the records but found no discrepancies. Ding Li contacted the brand supplier to investigate. They had to trace the counterfeit's origin. The boss immediately tested the warehouse stock all genuine, meaning only the sold bag was fake. Guanwen wrote sales customer on the whiteboard. They deduced, since the supply chain was secure, only two possibilities remained. First, a salesperson swapped the genuine item. Second, the customer returned home and swapped the fake bag. It was also possible both parties colluded in a staged scheme. They quickly identified a breakthrough. The two then separately questioned the salesperson and customer. Both claimed they were manipulated and didn't want responsibility, but the salesperson refused to reveal who was behind it. They suspected President Zhang was responsible. However, the entire sequence of events didn't align with that. Guanwen returned to the company and went straight to Lei Jun. To their surprise, Lei Jun immediately brought up the counterfeit goods issue. Guanwen concluded Lei Jun must be involved, though President Zhang wasn't directly responsible. Guanwen believed he couldn't escape connection to the matter. Sure enough, when Lei Jun reported to the group, President Zhang ordered a routine investigation. Later, President Zhang had his secretary draft an announcement for the headquarters, commending Ding Li and Guanwen for their handling of the counterfeit goods incident. The secretary couldn't understand why President Zhang was letting them off so easily this time. But how could President Zhang be so kind? Guanwen didn't feel particularly happy after seeing the email. At that moment, Luo De, who had also received the news, came over to congratulate Guanwen. It seemed the entire company thought the two of them were riding high right now, so this was President Zhang's intention. But Guanwen felt something was off with Yali. Lately his performance had clearly declined. Guanwen was keenly aware of this change. Indeed, a woman's intuition is remarkably accurate. Yali had been relentlessly spreading rumors about Guanwen throughout the company, and every word was overheard by Ding Li's friend. Yet Ding Li showed no urgency whatsoever. These malicious rumors damaged Guanwen's reputation, prompting partners to cancel collaborations with her. This scene was witnessed by Lei Jun, who was delighted after all. He orchestrated it all. Yali was merely a pawn he manipulated. Just as Lei Jun thought his schemes had succeeded, the situation unexpectedly reversed. How could President Zhang let Ding Li off so easily this time? Without asking for explanations, he sought to condemn both women. But Ding Li and Guanwen weren't about to be pushed around. Guanwen then produced a voice recorder containing evidence of Lei Jun slandering them. It turned out Guanwen had witnessed Lei Jun sowing discord in front of Yali. Fortunately, Yali didn't believe the slander at the critical moment, so they turned the tables. Yali deliberately spread rumors to make Lei Jun believe them. Then they recorded evidence of him framing Guanwen and Ding Li. President Zhang never imagined the two could be so formidable. Ding Li wanted to know how to deal with Lei Jun, but President Zhang shamelessly tried to defend Lei Jun. Knowing he was in the wrong, President Zhang dismissed them, promising a satisfactory resolution. Instead, he merely wrote a self-criticism letter. Ding Li was deeply dissatisfied with this outcome. With President Zhang's backing, Lei Jun gloated triumphantly, while Guanwen was furious. Ding Li resolved to help Guanwen. The next day, Lei Jun stormed in to confront Ding Li. It turned out that 3 months prior, when Lei Jun first targeted Guanwen, Ding Li had overheard him. How could he keep someone with such dishonest motives? Ding Li instructed HR to overhaul the evaluation system for company directors. This uncovered Lei Jun's falsified academic credentials. Lei Jun protested. HR never asked when I joined. Ding Li warned him this warning would be officially recorded. A second offense would spell serious trouble. Thus, Lei Jun was inexplicably pushed out by Ding Li. Upon seeing Lei Jun emerge from the office, Guanwen immediately sought out Ding Li. It seemed he'd long been plotting against Lei Jun. Meanwhile, President Zhang was furious upon reviewing Wanli's performance report. At this rate, he'd lose to Ding Li. That evening, the group held a celebratory banquet for Wanli. Everyone assumed Ding Li would be the honored guest, yet to everyone's shock, President Zhang attributed all the credit to Lei Jun. Not only that, he pinned every problem squarely on Ding Li. Only then did Ding Li realize these two had been colluding all along. Unable to bear it any longer, Ding Li turned and walked out. Guanwen watched the hypocritical face on stage and let out a cold laugh. As a board member of the group, How could he be so blind to right and wrong? Guanwen then turned and left. At that moment, Ding Li was releasing his emotions at the bar. Guanwen didn't disturb him, but silently accompanied him from behind. Guanwen knew Ding Li needed time to calm down now. Ding Li told Guanwen not to worry, he wouldn't give up easily. Guanwen, too, had unwavering faith in Ding Li. In her eyes, he was unmatched. Bolstered by her support and trust, Ding Li's confidence soared. The next day, Guanwen arrived with a bag of groceries. She decided to cook for Ding Li herself that evening. Watching her flustered preparations, Ding Li stepped in to help. Before long, a beautifully prepared steak appeared before Guanwen. She then praised Ding Li, looking at his girlfriend. Ding Li's eyes brimmed with affection. The next day, President Zhang called Ding Li in for a talk. Although his sales performance was solid, rental income was declining. Therefore, he needed someone skilled in marketing to assist him, which is why he made the exceptional promotion of Lei Jun. Guanwen told him not to worry about the rent issue, she would definitely help resolve it. The very next day, Guanwen announced the rent increase. Some smaller brands cooperated readily, but TL refused to renew at the current rate and demanded a reduction. Guanwen dispatched Luo De to notify TL that they must vacate the premises immediately upon contract expiration. The following day, Bai De arrived as expected, though Xianya was absent. Learning she'd resigned the previous month, Guanwen felt a pang of disappointment. Bai De attempted to persuade Guanwen to renew their long-term lease by invoking past ties. Guanwen stated Wanli would no longer partner with TL and instructed them to prepare for closure. With that, he rose and departed with grace. As Bai De was about to leave, he bumped into Lei Jun. The two arranged to meet at a coffee shop. Regarding the contract renewal, Bai De asked Lei Jun to help find a solution. Lei Jun offered to connect him with President Zhang. At the next day's meeting, Lei Jun ignored Ding Li's proposed marketing plan. Without this funding, how could they host sales events? This left Guanwen utterly distraught. Learning of Ding Li's predicament, a close friend immediately applied to his father, President Xiao, to become Wanli's marketing director. This caught Lei Jun completely off guard. Just then, Guanwen proposed a hybrid online-offline model. Ding Li expressed approval for Guanwen's suggestion. Ding Li envisioned bringing outdoor markets indoors to the mall and attract consumers with quirky gadgets and specialty foods. This would not only boost sales but also allow the leasing department to collect rent. They then convened a meeting. Lei Jun never imagined they'd devise a solution so quickly. Headquarters soon received their marketing proposal. President Zhang saw no reason to reject this flawless plan. Lei Jun, however, declared he had a countermeasure ready. Lucy, who had previously worked with Ding Li. Lucy's arrival surprised everyone. Lei Jun immediately briefed her on their recent discussion. Learning Ding Li oversaw offline promotions, Lucy claimed she had project management experience. Guanwen felt deeply resentful. With team assignments finalized, she stormed out without another moment. This delighted Lei Jun immensely. Lucy was no saint. Guanwen certainly wouldn't give her any respect either. But Lucy wasn't about to let it go. Leveraging her work relationship with Ding Li, she brazenly clung to him. When Ding Li told her to let go, she only moved closer. Guanwen approached from a distance. Ding Li, startled, quickly released Lucy's hand. Guanwen's jealousy was palpable to everyone present. Seeing the two so uncomfortable, Lei Jun felt quite pleased. Ding Li gloated at Guanwen's jealousy. Lucy's arrival had planted seeds of insecurity in Guanwen. The usually diligent Guanwen drifted through the meeting, completely oblivious to their conversation. Lei Jun triumphantly reported to President Zhang that his plan had worked. Guanwen was now too distracted to focus on work. President Zhang was delighted to hear this. Meanwhile, Guanwen seethed whenever she saw Ding Li. Ding Li directly intercepted Guanwen to invite her to dinner, only to be flatly refused. The large event venue was completely empty. Leaving Ding Li frantic, she hurriedly called Lucy, only to be mocked by Guanwen. The two erupted into a full-blown argument. Lei Jun, watching nearby, was delighted and quickly called President Zhang. But the next moment, an assistant rushed in to report a sudden influx of customers in the mall. Lei Jun was stunned by the crowd. It turned out Ding Li had already explained the situation to Guanwen yesterday. Her attitude toward Lucy was meant to catch President Zhang and Lei Jun off guard. Upon hearing this, Guanwen felt a sudden sense of clarity. She had been set up by Ding Li. Only then did Lei Jun realize he'd been played by Ding Li and Guanwen. He remembered the online mini-program and rushed to find Guanwen, but it was too late. Guanwen had already sealed the deal with the other party. President Zhang received the news and flew into a rage. In the end, he had to step in personally to resolve the situation. That day, the group held a major meeting. President Zhang specially invited the behind-the-scenes powerhouse, President Lin, to attend. This piqued Guanwen's curiosity. Why would President Lin come this time? Today was the third quarter performance review for Wanli. It was also the final deadline for Ding Li's bet with President Zhang. Thanks to the flawless and outstanding marketing plan, Ding Li won again. President Lin held Ding Li in high regard. Since Ding Li had achieved the target, shouldn't the previously agreed terms now take effect? President Lin agreed, but President Zhang objected. He argued that Guanwen shouldn't have prioritized personal grudges over the company's interests. Facing their questioning, Guanwen calmly admitted his actions. He then explained why he hadn't renewed the contract with TL. Guanwen directly handed him a report. This left President Zhang speechless. President Lin also strongly supported Guanwen's decision. President Zhang was left with no defense, and his career came to an end. After scheming for so long, his efforts ultimately came to naught. Ding Li and his team celebrated their resounding victory. Ding Li treated the entire company to a lavish feast. Lucy seized the chance to get closer. Ding Li, out of courtesy, didn't refuse. Someone then suggested playing a game together. Lucy, intrigued, proposed a game that was both brain-teasing and fun. After one round, Lucy volunteered to play a game with Ding Li, but Ding Li declined. Since no one else knew Ding Li and Guanwen were dating, everyone just clapped on the sidelines. At that moment, Guanwen directly requested to join the game. With Guanwen speaking up, Ding Li had no choice but to agree. Yet during the game, Guanwen didn't give Lucy a single chance to speak. With just a gesture from Ding Li, she instantly guessed the answers. Their perfect chemistry had everyone wondering if they were a couple. Only Lucy kept pretending not to notice, blocking Ding Li from leaving. This time, Guanwen couldn't hold back any longer and openly admitted their relationship, boldly staking her claim. Lucy was stunned. Ding Li was overjoyed. Now he had both love and career success. The next day, Guanwen's former boss offered her the position of brand expansion director to replace Bai Di. Guanwen found it ironic she'd once craved this position, but now that it was offered, she no longer wanted it, because she'd found her true calling and someone to fight alongside. Meanwhile, Ding Li secured the corporate transfer order, officially becoming vice president. However, President Lin had one condition: he must spend 3 years in Singapore to help establish the new subsidiary. For Ding Li, this was a golden opportunity to broaden his international horizons. Moreover, with overseas experience, he could potentially join the board. In the past, he would have accepted without hesitation. But now, with Guanwen in his life, he felt conflicted. That evening, he visited Guanwen, torn and unsure how to broach the subject. Noticing his preoccupation, Guanwen pressed him repeatedly about what was troubling him. Ding Li recounted his conversation with President Lin. Guanwen believed this was a rare opportunity he should seize, yet Ding Li felt 3 years was too long. Guanwen argued that supporting each other to become better versions of themselves was more valuable, but they had only just started their relationship. To part for 3 years was unbearable for Ding Li. Soon, the day of Ding Li's departure arrived. Guanwen had said she wouldn't see him off, yet her heart felt hollow. Ultimately, she couldn't control her feelings and decided to accompany Ding Li part of the way. However, upon reaching the parking lot, they were stopped. Both men had lost their jobs because of her and had come to confront Guanwen with vengeance. Guanwen kindly warned them the area was under surveillance. The two then dragged Guanwen away. Meanwhile, Ding Li, who hadn't seen Guanwen, felt lost. He called her, but there was no answer. He then called Luode and learned Guanwen had been taken by Lei Jun and Baide. Ding Li grew anxious and immediately ordered the driver to turn around. Returning to the company, Ding Li rushed straight to the rooftop. Baide and Lei Jun had already been subdued by the police. Seeing Guanwen unharmed, his heart finally settled. These two hadn't intended to harm Guanwen. They'd only come looking for her out of desperation after losing their jobs. They clung tightly to Guanwen's legs, refusing to let go until the police arrived. After this incident, Ding Li realized something. He simply couldn't live without Guanwen, so he decided not to go to Singapore. Upon learning Guanwen was in danger, Ding Li felt fear deepening into despair. It was in that moment Ding Li suddenly realized, the purpose of work is to build a better life. But what meaning could life hold without Guanwen? And so, Both stayed at Wanli. At the commendation ceremony, President Lin appointed Guan Wen as Wanli's chief operating officer. Just as Guan Wen had said, when two people are together, they should support each other to become better versions of themselves.